Join our podcast conversations as we share ideas, insights, and information that will educate, inspire, and inform. We will blend our knowledge of online safety and emotional awareness to help you have a better understanding of your kids' online world and their emotional responses and well-being.
Here we are with another podcast.
We are, and this is exciting. This is really exciting. And not that all of our podcasts aren't extremely exciting, but today we have a special guest, Emily, and I'll get into how Emily and I met. So thank you so much, Emily, for being here or for not being here.
Oh, she probably hit the button.
Oops. Will she come back?
If she clicks on the link again, she will, and there she is. So we're
Okay,
going
perfect.
to. She's back. This is
Wi-Fi
great.
just kicked me off. We're starting off great.
I love it. So Emily, you're a magician. You disappear.
Magical.
That's what I like about you. So we'll get into how we met and your disappearing act. But Emily has a story, and so today. And I love people's stories. We all have a story, and it takes courage to share your journey. And I do think that through sharing, we find connections and you realize you're not alone. You breathe hope for people. And today, overcoming bullying, a teenager story. And Emily, you're the teenager, 18 years old. Here you are today. And a quick side note of how we met. I was in my mom's favorite clothing store. And Emily was our salesperson who was absolutely authentic and amazingly open. We just started into this amazing conversation about how actually you had saw me years and years and years ago at your school. Paul, you know that moment where you feel like really old, like you're happy, like, oh, I'm so glad you remember me when you were 3 and now you're 18.
I get that as a former soccer coach when my soccer players and say, "Hey, Coach Paul," and I'll look at them and they were 11, 12. Now they're 20, and you know the transformation, and you're looking, thinking, "Yes, I am Coach Paul, but who are you?" Because you grew up.
You're
right?
unrecognizable.
Yeah, but we stay the same. But yes, I've been there, done that.
So that's how we got chatting, and Emily said, I loved your message at that time. It really connected with me and resonated with me throughout my years. And let me tell you kind of some of the things that I faced, which is what I want to, and what our listeners want to hear today, Emily, is kind of like your story of your encounters with bullying. And for our listeners who are mainly parents and guardians and educators, this is great to have firsthand knowledge, not just on what you had to go through, but ultimately how you overcame it to become this confident, well-spoken young lady that you are right now.
Thank you. Yeah, so I came from a really small country school, which was basically 5 girls versus 18 guys in one class. And for me, I didn't really have many friends because we were always like divided in our classes. It was split classes. So I remember in grade 3, it was the first time we ever had like one grade. And that was when I kind of started meeting everyone and like trying to make friends. But it was kind of hard because when you're a kid, like when you're like 5 going into public school, if you haven't had preschool, like I didn't, so I didn't have that kind of requisite. When you go to school, you have to meet your friends and you have to like start fresh. And when you're starting fresh, you get like all your like little cliques and your little groups. And with me, from kindergarten to grade 1, I was the only girl in my class that was that grade. So when I went to grade 3, it was the first kind of year I was meeting everyone. And I didn't have that kind of former friend group. So it was like me starting fresh. So I go in and everything was fine for the first few months. And then we got a new teacher. And that's when things kind of started getting weird because no one really liked me for some reason. And I don't know why. And that was kind of when I had my first experiences with bullying. So with the 5 girls, all of them were prior friends and it was just me. And it kind of felt like all of them were targeting me. And no matter how hard I tried, I just couldn't like fit in.
Mm-hmm.
And so I brought it to my mom's attention. I was like, Mom, I don't really know what's going on. No one's liking me and they're being really mean. And like that kind of like scenario where you think they pick me last for gym. I was always the last person for gym. Like it hit home when people say that now.
Mm-hmm.
So when I brought it to my mom, because she's an EA, she works in the school system, she brought it to my principal. And at that time, the principal was so go lucky. She's like, yeah, let's go fix this. We don't want bullying. That's not okay. We want everyone to feel included and everyone to have like a great experience at school, which is what everyone should have.
Mm-hmm.
So for the first little bit, my principal, she did genuinely try. But after time, it kind of just seemed like it didn't matter and that it was never really going to get better. And when you're 9 years old, like you're just starting to figure out life and like get a grasp on it. And when even the adults have no hope for kind of fixing your situation, you kind of just feel alone.
Mm.
So throughout the rest of grade 3, I was just kind of by myself and I was fine with it. Like I had books. Books were great.
Yeah, your own world.
Yeah, like
Yeah,
Geronimo Stilton. That was where I was at. I would just wait outside at lunch. And so I kind of just kept saying to myself, you know what? We're going to get into grade 4 and we're going to keep going. We're going to start fresh. Because with my public school, we had 3 sections. So it was like, oh God, I can't remember the first one. So it was like public, intermediate, and then like the older kids.
Mm-hmm.
Junior, then the older kids. So when you go to grade 4, you're in a new like field, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So after that year, I went into grade 4. And again, we had split classes and it was fine for the most part because I had one friend. We were absolutely the closest we could be and everything was kind of fine. There were some boys who were rude here and there. But I remember, and this was like one of the first real instances that I knew I was kind of being like full on bullied. So my teacher had this thing set up that she would pick 3 helpers each day. So one day I was one of the helpers and you'd go up and you would help her mark like word sheets.
Mm-hmm.
So each week we had remember 10 words and we'll do a little quiz and you'll write them out. So when we wrote them out, you had to go through and check if everyone spelled them right. So I was going through and I was checking, making sure everyone spelled it right, like everyone else was. And it comes to my page because I got handed back to me. And my page had whiteout everywhere on it. And I was a little confused because it wasn't my teacher who marked my page. So little 10-year-old me decided to erase the whiteout. And it had messages like, you're dumb, you're not smart. And it really hurt.
Mm-hmm.
So I brought it to my teacher's attention and we brought it to my new principal because at that time we had a different principal. And again, she started kind of helping me. I would go out of class sometimes. I'd talk to her. There was other people I'd talk to, and we tried to figure this out. And again, it was fine for a bit. And then it wasn't. And then grade 6 and 7 were kind of the same. It was just, you feel so hopeless and like you're never really going to get out of that because you don't have any friends. There's no reason to go to school. You hate it there. But once I got to grade 8, I had this idea in my head. I'm going to get to high school and I'm going to put like my public school behind me and I'm not going to worry about that. I'm going to start absolutely fresh. I know what I want.
Mm-hmm.
I want to start new. I want to be a better me. I want to be kind to absolutely every person I meet. And I want to be the best me I possibly can. So I go through the rest of public school and I get into high school. And oh my God, high school is horrifying, I will say. When you are a little kid with no preparation, you go and you're like, oh, wow, there's people everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
But
terrifying.
Oh God, was it ever? It was like
I can remember that moment.
Oh, yeah. So I go in and I met this one girl and then she met somebody else and I met somebody else and we just formed this lunch group. And from that moment on, I knew that everything was kind of going to be okay because I just kind of kept pushing.
Mm-hmm.
Like my grandma has always said to me, there is always going to be a light at the end of the tunnel and you two will get through this. So anytime you're in like kind of a rough situation, you just think to yourself, yeah, it sucks right now, but what's going to happen in the future? Keep looking towards that future. Like it's going to get better. As much as cliche as it is, and as often as people say, it is true. Like you kind of just have to have that little bit of determination to be
Mhm.
curious. Be curious of what's going to happen the next day. Be curious of the opportunities, like this opportunity here, actually.
Oh
Like,
my gosh, and you know what I love that you just said? And, you know, this is an opportunity for us to hear
mhm,
from you, so thank you, is you had a mindset of this challenge is a chapter of my life, not my
yeah.
whole story, which
Hmm.
I believe is a resilient mindset. And you didn't even know it at the time, but if we look back, we pick it apart. When you believe a challenge is a chapter of your life, not your whole story, you give your brain a focus
Hmm.
that creates hope. And every single person needs hope to keep going. If
Yeah.
you switch it around to this challenge is not a chapter, it is my whole story. Now your brain is focused on hopelessness.
Yeah.
And then all emotions that are, you know, like flood, and you're in a deep, dark place.
Hmm.
And it's a switch of a mindset. And that's exactly what you're sharing is actually what got you through, that built
Hmm.
your resilience. It wasn't because the circumstance changed instantly, because you keep saying over and over again, there was, okay, this is a fresh start. Okay,
Yep.
shoot, this isn't it. Okay, this is the fresh
Yep.
start. Okay, shoot, that's not it either. And would you say that it molded who you are today?
Oh, definitely. Like, if I didn't have all of the experiences I did in public school, I would definitely not be the person I am today. Like, I have learned through being bullied and through everything else I went through public school. At the end of the day, you are one of the only people who matters to yourself. Your opinion of yourself, your
Mm,
mindset, anything, like it comes back to you. And to be kind to people, like with my job now and actually how I did meet you, one of the things that I find so rewarding about that job is just being kind to people, getting to know their story. Like, I remember one day this lady came in and she kind of had this feeling of like sadness. And I said, "Hey, how are you doing? Is everything going okay? Like, do you need any help today?" She's like, "You know what? No, today just isn't today. It's not feeling great." And so we kind of walked around the store and I was helping her and she was just talking about her day. And I simply, like, after everything that we did and we talked, I said, "You know what? I hope you have a fantastic day. After everything that you've gone through, just know that tomorrow is a fresh new start and you're going to do amazing." And she stopped me and she said, "You're one of the first people who's actually taken the time to talk to me today. And it means so much that you put in that effort to say such kind words. And I hope you have an amazing day too." Like, I've met so many people through my job and it's so
mm.
rewarding because everyone has a different story and everyone has a different like kind of outlook on life. And it's interesting to hear everything because then you kind of mold your own ideas, like what I did with
Mm,
public school.
mhm. Oh my goodness, like well, that was moving and authentic and real, and I think more people connecting
Hmm.
and taking what some people find is their imperfection or their imperfected
Hmm.
perfection of their day. I say imperfection builds connection.
Exactly.
If you can tap into that, we actually more people connect to that because they're like, oh my gosh, I'm not the only one, or they
Hmm.
find support and resilience. We need support.
Hmm.
And what a gift you give to people just by giving them space to share, and you're actually taking time to listen. And before we move on to what I want to actually bring in Paul on is, you know how you said in your story, you said, my intention is I'm going to be so kind. I'm going to be kind to everyone. You said that going to grade 9.
Yep.
And I'm a big believer in the power of intention because your brain works really well with an end result in mind. And so when you intend something, you say, okay, I'm going to be kind, you actually lived into that.
Apologize. My Wi-Fi is so spotty for no reason.
No, well, you know
No
what? You
worries.
came back at the perfect time because I just led into what you're going to answer, which is I'm just going to say you intended to be so kind and you're still living into that intention because you showed kindness
Hmm.
to that lady, where some of us get in our own emotions in our own day are like, you're
Yeah.
having a bad day? You want to hear about my day? Oh, you want a bad day? Like, you know, I had to 7 up that bad day with it instead of just like, here's some space to connect.
Hmm.
So thank you for that.
No problem.
And Paul, what I wanted to know is when you hear Emily's story, you know what you don't hear? Her talking about cyberbullying.
Right.
Now, Emily, if we were to add cyberbullying onto that, like in grade 3, 4, 5, 6, if then you were to go home,
Mm.
how would that change? And what could, and then we're going to go into like just different supports that we could give for parents that are listening.
Mm-hmm. I would honestly say at my time, we didn't really have technology.
Mm-hmm.
So to put in the scenario that we did, I really don't want to imagine what it's like because I've never personally dealt with cyberbullying. I do know quite a lot about it from other friends and people I know.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the main difference between in person bullying versus cyberbullying, people have a completely different mindset. Like, when you have a person approach you saying you suck, blah, blah, like it's coming directly from them. But when you have a person online saying that stuff, they will say so much worse things because there's no consequences. Because when technology was first starting to become a thing, at least for me, it was like a free playground. You could do whatever you wanted, say whatever you wanted, and there was nothing at the end of the day that could be done about it because it'd never come back to you. So if I in grade 3 probably dealt with cyberbullying, I think a lot of things would be way worse because the teachers wouldn't know really how to help. And same with parents.
Mm-hmm.
Because, and I think another thing, when you're a kid being cyberbullied, half the time you don't really want to confront it. You'll just think it'll go away because it is online, it is not in person.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people I know who have personally dealt with it, they put too much kind of thought into it. Like the nice thing about computers and whatnot, you can shut them off at the end of the day. Like they're not, you don't have to give them as much kind of time and effort as many people do.
Oh, I love that you just said that.
Yeah, like
And
Paul, don't you just love that?
she's right. But
Like, so in
remember
a
how
way,
humanity works right now is that
I
they
know.
don't have that ability. It's a discipline,
Well,
right?
exactly.
They want to continue. Did somebody else say something? Did somebody respond to
Mhm.
that? Did somebody like that comment that was
Yep.
mean towards me? There's this obsession with what's next, what's next, what's coming.
Mhm.
I want to go back to one thing Emily said at the beginning when she said grade 9 is going to be a brand new start.
Yep.
Emily, I'm a father of 2 girls, and
Oh.
every kid in elementary school goes through their situations. And I remember telling both my girls this exact same message, and they're 3 years apart. Your 2, 3, 4 besties will be found in grade 9 or 10 in high school.
Oh yeah.
I was bang on correct, and then you just said it, which gave me chills because I thought this is pretty cool. In
Yeah.
elementary school, you have acquaintances and you have friends
Yeah.
at the time. Then you all grow, and so yeah, you do find, and it's not about 1,000 friends.
Mhm.
It's about a core group of friends.
Yeah.
And so you found that, my daughters found that. Online, it's about how many likes and how many followers, and we have
Yeah.
to come back to the human aspect. And going back to bullying in person, as you experience, to bullying online, and I experienced bullying once in elementary school. It was in grade 5.
Mhm.
It happened at the school. We both dealt with it, and then it ended.
Yeah.
Online, it continues, it
Yeah.
festers. There's a snapshot of it. When you do a Google search, there's a reminder of it 10 years down the
Mhm.
road. So bullying is vastly different. How it's dealt with in many aspects is the same. But
Mhm.
now when it's happening online, something that could have occurred, let's say you brought up the whiteout piece and how you removed it and you found comments. Well, let's say that was online.
Mhm.
You could be reminded of that in 5 years from now, in 4 years from now,
Yeah.
3 months from now, which will bring you back to, oh yeah, that happened to me in grade 5.
Mhm.
That impacts a lot of people. So I think bullying will never be eradicated. Can we
Oh
tremendously
no.
reduce it? Let's go back to what Emily said. We just need to start being kinder to each other.
Mhm.
But we need to spread positivity. And if we are going to be threatened or bullied, we're going to report it.
Exactly.
You have to report, not be afraid. And you did
Mhm.
the right thing. And I wish, Emily, you had more support at the time
Yeah.
from those individuals that you approach. Because, yes, initially, I've seen this before. there's a lot of, yeah, you know what, we're going to take care of that. And all of a
Mhm.
sudden, it seems to dwindle sometimes.
Yep.
If there's immediate consequence, in many cases, it's resolved and we're moving on. And we need more of the resolution. But we need kids to know that if they speak out, that they will be supported
Mhm.
and that there will be consequence of action. So we'll never eradicate it, but we
Mhm.
can tremendously reduce it if we have individuals like Emily that have the courage to speak to their
Mhm.
teachers and their principals and their parents. And then those adults who our children are entrusting with when it comes to this message are now going to do something about it. And that, I think, is how we combat that side of it. Because if it was just in the schoolyard, in the classroom, like Emily dealt with, you know, I don't, all bullying is horrible.
Oh, of course.
But that old school at least was resolved and we moved on versus online. It sometimes literally is everlasting. And now people think bullying is a school thing. It's a workplace thing as well.
Oh, big time.
You know, I mean, I've talked to corporations about bullying in the workplace. And it's not
Yep.
one-on-one walking by someone's office or a cubicle or after hours at a corporate function. It's actually online. And
Yeah.
that has legal consequences in many cases. So it doesn't just end at school. But if we take Emily's position, which is be kind, but do what she did, which was speak out, we'll be a lot further ahead.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mhm.
it's not the technology, it's how the technology is being used right now, which took an
Mhm.
old school concept of being mean to another person and now bringing it online. So there are so many avenues we can take to reduce bullying. It starts off with someone like an Emily. And you know, I'm going to sidetrack one more time. You know what's great about having Emily on here? She's taking her story to hopefully inspire a parent who will tell their child, hey, make sure you come to me for anything.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
I've had parents at my presentation say, do you mind the next time you come to town, could I have my child who experienced something speak? Every time I hear that, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because someone's real life experience in front of an audience, I've had moms brought to tears. I'll never forget, it was in Calgary, Alberta, where a mother who was a teacher at my presentation said, my daughter experienced exactly what we just spoke about. She got over it. Can she come and speak? She spoke for less than 5 minutes during the segment of bullying my presentation. And literally half of them were in tears because she experienced it. She told them how she overcame it, empowered them. So they felt sad. And then we need stories like Emily.
Mm-hmm.
It's so important because people connect with people. And that's why this is awesome that you and Sarah connected, because this
Mhm.
will help hopefully connect with a parent who'll say, you know what? I heard a story. They overcame it. I need to talk to my child about the importance of connection. Do you agree,
Mm-hmm.
Sarah?
Absolutely. And I love, and it really what you shared earlier, two things that stand out for me, which is mindset. So kudos to you, Emily, about being on your own team.
Mhm.
That confidence is inside you, and instilling that message as a parent for myself, but also for
Mhm.
my son is so important, because he's come home and said, this person said this about me, or they made fun of my body, and I have stories too of growing up, and at the end of the day, that's their opinion and it doesn't mean much. But truly, I wrote that song because that that is people's opinion. They're going to have opinions, and some are going to be positive and some are going to be
Yeah.
disrespectful. But at the end of the day, you have the final say in what you believe about yourself.
Mhm.
And that takes support. That takes courage to believe in yourself even when it feels like others don't. The
Mhm.
other thing that really stands out for me that you shared is when we talked about cyberbullying, you said, I haven't experienced that, but you said something super wise. We don't need to give computers so much power and time.
Yes. Like, it's for me, I didn't have a phone until grade 10. So I never delve into that kind of stuff.
Do you know, Emily, I've had people that are in grade 8, which you would see now as being like, yeah, they've got to have social media in grade 8, and
Yeah.
saying, I'm not allowed, and being okay with it. Not that they didn't probably, kick and scream at the time, but that one of them I remember actually pulling me aside and being like, there might be good things online, but I hear so many negative things. And she's like, I don't even want to deal with that. And I was like,
Mhm.
good, good, good. And So I want to ask you, as being a teenager, when your mom like set up a boundary for you, this is good for us parents, a boundary for you that you probably didn't like. So she could have said like no phone till you're in grade 10. And maybe you were fine with it, but maybe if you weren't, when you look back now, the boundaries that your mom gave you that you might not have liked at the time, do you see them as being beneficial when you look back?
Oh, yeah. Yes. Like, for me, I didn't get social media till I want to say I was in grade 6, and I didn't really use it that much. I didn't really start using it until grade 10. But for my mom putting in those boundaries, it was so nice because I had those social development periods. Like, I figured out how to talk to people. And I find with having like too much of an easy access to like social media, a lot of people don't know how to like communicate in person anymore. And again, with putting in those boundaries, it has taught me a lot because I know kind of the dangers and safeties of being online because my mom took the time to kind of teach me that and be like, okay, don't give all your information online, be safe, and like, don't do things that you wouldn't do in person. Like, don't walk up to a stranger, don't text a stranger.
So, Emily, did your mom put the restriction that no phone until grade 10?
No, it wasn't really a restriction. It was just I never liked phones.
So
So
you
I
chose
didn't.
not to want to get one.
Yeah, like I had a phone. I just didn't use it. Like,
Wow.
Okay, so every parent listening right now is like, oh my gosh, like
oh, but it gets worse. I had a flip phone up until I got my job because I didn't like them.
You are speaking Paul's language right now.
So, Emily, the one thing I talk about with parents, grade 4, 5, 6, why do you give them a smartphone? If you need a communication tool, and I will not, smartphones and medical emergencies, I will subscribe to that. And that's a fraction of a percent. Every other kid with a smartphone, grade 4, 5, 6, has been peer pressured. They feel they can't be part of a group if they don't have one. And I say, look, for the purposes of communication, in 2022, I'm not going to argue with you, 911, mom, I'm stuck at whatever.
Yeah.
Buy them a flip phone. They're available on Amazon. They dial 911. They make phone calls. They text. But it's painstaking. You know that, Emily, right? To dial an LOL takes about 30 seconds. Remember that?
It's so hard.
And I even tell them, I said, here's the best part. No one's going to want to steal it from you. So how cool is that, right?
Exactly.
Right. And
Hey,
I also tell them, I said, students, I travel around, and this is not bragging. This is me as a Sabra guy. I travel around with 4 smartphones and 1 flip phone. And they'll look at the flip phone and say, it's the most secure device that I have. So when I'm doing something of a sensitive nature, I'm not bringing my smartphones with me. I'm not traveling to, the United States with my smartphone. I'm traveling with my flip phone. So I try and make it cool, but it's practical. It's not that you need it. Are we talking about necessity or what everybody else has? And I say, you want something practical. So people will laugh off smartphones, flip phones. It's actually practical because it does what you need it to do. And it doesn't distract. And the fact that you brought that up, when Sarah said you're speaking my language, I'm like, yes.
He's tickled pink. He's like,
sorry if I'm
yes.
blushing. Yeah.
Well, and it's so true. And I know where we get close to the end, Emily. Like were you gonna say something?
Well, I just wanted to touch on to Paul's thing. Like I find with flip phone.
See how she disappears? Like she is magician.
She's a magician.
She's like, you know what? I'm done talking about flip phones. I actually don't want to talk about flip phones anymore. I'm out. Here she's back now.
Third time's a charm.
Yeah. I love
so
that.
Go on from when flip phones go.
Okay. So quickly, flip phones, like you have calling and texting. Like if you have one of the old Blackberries, you can do like the actual button texting, not the like 3 presses to get 1 letter. But I find when I was using a flip phone compared to a smartphone in public, I didn't feel like I had to be on my phone that much. Like I didn't have the draw to check social media. I didn't have the draw to text or check my messages. It was
because you were embarrassed.
A little bit. It was more so like an essential. I didn't need to text. I didn't need to call. And if I did, I had it when I needed it. It was I felt more present and in that moment when using a flip phone as compared to a smartphone.
Ah, I love that. You've sold me on. You should be a sales rep for flip phones. You're more present and mindful and in the moment. Yes,
Mhm.
sign me up. Okay, that's what I do. That's what I do yoga and meditation for. But if it just takes a
Ooh.
flip phone, uh, and you know, Emily, what I would love to when we come full circle with and end this podcast is, what would you tell a parent of a a parent of someone who is struggling with being bullied or disrespected at school? What did you find was the most helpful thing your parents did for you or
I
your mom?
think the most helpful thing any adult, whether it be my parents, my grandparents, or like aunts and uncles ever did, was kind of take the time to listen to me and let me talk about how I was feeling, and then working through my emotions together so it didn't feel like it was all on my kind of shoulders. So I would
I,
say talking would be the best thing to do
I
for
can't
both
believe
sides.
I can't believe I've never met Emily, because Emily, one of the messages I tell parents is have open, transparent relationships with your children.
Hmm.
It is the key to overcoming all the issues they're dealing with it online, because kids that are afraid to speak to their parents, kids that are secretive,
Hmm.
don't get the right resolutions. But kids that can go to their parents without judgment,
Yeah.
fear, or
Mhm.
embarrassment, and parents engaging their kids, we get resolutions. So,
Hmm.
from the flip phone to this, it's amazing. And I'm thankful to have met you. This is great. And I think
Thank you.
that's an amazing way to end this off, because
Mhm.
parents need to know that communication and that listening is so vitally important, because if they know they can't come to you,
Hmm.
they're going somewhere else, and
Yeah.
those are never good outcomes. So
Hmm.
The safety. We've got to be our kids' safe place,
yeah.
and that's so important. And Emily, you piqued my ears when you said the emotions. So
Hmm.
I just want to know, as we end, what emotions did you find were triggered from disrespect and bullying, and how did you find moving through them?
I found the emotions I felt the most were anger, because I didn't understand why A, somebody could say and do the things they were, and B, why they would want to. And then sadness, because I felt so alone and like I was the only one going through it, because at that time not many people were speaking out about being bullied. It was just kind of an underlying thing. And with working through them, like I've found since then, I've learned some coping skills, like taking a step back and just breathing. Like,
Mm.
whether you're overwhelmed in life or overwhelmed with other people, just literally taking a step back and being like, it's going to be okay. I'm going to get past this.
So
And
breathing and mindset. Mm.
yeah,
Yeah, and reading.
reading, it strengthens the brain.
Yes. Oh my goodness, you are so wise. You really are. And it's a gift to, I agree with Paul, to have you. And so fortunate for you to share your story and your strategies. Because it's
Hmm.
not just stories you shared strategies on
Yeah.
how to move through, and mindsets and emotional awareness. You just talked about self regulation. I mean, we've touched on it all, Paul. Flip phones. Like, I mean, like
The full thing. We
I think
reached
that this,
every end.
we can't ask for more. No, Emily, I think we have to have a part 2 at some point, don't we, Paul?
I think
Ooh.
so. There's so much more. There's so much we can talk about.
Mhm.
Oh.
When you take what Emily has shared and sometimes dissected, that could add more value and meaning. But I think from the surface, if parents listen to her voice in terms of her messaging,
Hmm.
they can take a lot away from it, because we share this information as quote unquote professionals in what we do. But hearing the voice, especially of someone who's experienced it and giving strategy, it's incredibly powerful. And
Hmm.
I hope parents take this to heart, and I hope they sit down when they hear this and have a conversation with their child, wherever it is. It could be driving in the car.
Let them
Hmm.
It could
hear this.
let them hear
Yeah.
this, but
Yeah.
also have that one-on-one with your child.
Hmm.
Sit at dinner table without your technology, as we've always talked about, and talk to your child and let them know you will always be there for them. And if they have to listen to this podcast and hear Emily's voice, I think they should do it as well.
They should do that. So,
Yeah.
Emily, let's have you end, because we always end with like, this is what we know. But How about we end with this is what you know, and pretend there's a kid listening right now. So hopefully there
Okay.
is. What would you say to that kid? Almost like you're talking to the grade 3 you. What's one piece of advice?
One piece of advice I would definitely have to say to whether it be my younger self or anyone out there is just look towards the future. Right now, it absolutely sucks, and I will not dispute that. But by taking one small step a day and looking at just even a butterfly, saying that thing is beautiful and that brightened my day, one small thing a day adds up over time. And then you come to a place where, for me, it's like 10 years later, and I'm sitting back and I'm like, wow, I have come so far in my life, and I've made small steps that amounted to big steps, and I'm proud of myself. It just takes one small thing a day, and you're doing great.
Oh, I love that. Thank you so much, Emily. I appreciate you. We appreciate you.
Thank you, Emily.
Thank
This has
you,
been
guys.
awesome. This has been one of the Sarah of all the podcasts, and we've always loved our podcast. I think this is probably done best.
I do.
But
Thank you.
I just want to say thank you guys so much for the opportunity. Like, for you to reach out to like someone who's not a professional and actually get somebody else's story. It's nice spreading both your guys' messages and mine, and just helping anyone and everyone to find someone who they see themselves in.
Are you sure you're not like 58 in an 18-year-old body? Like, I don't know what's happening. And you have super cool hair. So if you're listening to this podcast, you got to also look at how cool Emily's hair is. So you might want to go on YouTube, see that. But truly, thank you so much. And
Thank
everybody, thank you so much for listening, and take care.
Until next time.
This is what we know.
This is what we know.
And what Emily knows.
And what Emily knows.